Okay, Baltimore City Council, Ways and Means Committee, we're back in session. City Council Ordinance 22-0235, Ordinance of Estimates for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2023. I'm Eric Costello, Councilman from the 11th District, Chair of the committee. I'm joined to my far right by Council Vice President Sharon Green Middleton, 6th District, member of the committee. To my immediate left, Councilman Robert Stokes, 12th District, member of the committee. And to my far left, Councilman Isaac Yitzi Schleifer, 5th District, member of the committee. On behalf of Mayor Brandon Scott is Natasha Mehew, and on behalf of Council President Nick Mosby is Nate Poole. To my immediate right is Marguerite Curran, staff to the committee. Director Moore, we are here for Rec and Parks today. First, I want to take a moment to thank you for submitting a response in time to the letter that I sent you back on May 14th. You were one of 3 agencies that responded on time, so I do appreciate that. What we're going to do today is, first, when I turn it over to you, a couple quick housekeeping rules or things. I'm going to ask you to introduce the members of your team that you have with you, so just say their full name and what their position title is and division, all that good stuff. Then I'm going to turn it over to you for your presentation. Do we know how many slides we have?
I think it's like 14, 15.
14, and they're using the standard BBMR template. Okay, so 1 per service. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to keep the presentation to in the 15 to 20 minute range. Then we're going to step through the responses in the letter to each item. I know a number of these requests came from members of the council that are actually here today, so we can talk about those in depth. And then we will get into questions and answers from the committee. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Excellent. If you are speaking, you're welcome to take your mask off. I just ask that you keep the mic about a hand length away so that the folks that are watching at home can hear this and the folks from Charm TV who are recording the hearing. Inevitably, someone in this room is going to screw that up today. I've done it. My colleagues have done it. Every single agency has done it, except for Councilman Stokes. He's the only one who has not done it. So I'm going to politely interrupt you when you do it. I guarantee that will not be the last time that someone from your agency does it. And again, I will politely interrupt you just so we make sure everyone can hear us, okay? Director Moore, take it away and introductions and go from there.
Chairman Costello, fellow council members, Councilman Stokes, Councilman Schleifer, and Councilwoman Middleton. Thank you all for having us here today as we will be talking about our BCRP proposed budget for FY2023. So along with myself, I'm Reginald Moore, Executive Director of Baltimore City Rec and Parks. To my right is Jasiah Smith, Chief of Staff. To my far right is Ken King, Chief Financial Officer. Directly behind me is Adam Boardman, who's our Chief of Capital Development. Next to Adam is Ed Willing, who's the Deputy Director of Parks. Next to Ed is Nicole Green, who is the Deputy Director of Administrations. And next to Nicole is Darryl Sutton, who is our Recreation Operations Manager. Also, we have Jenny Morgan, who's our Legislative Liaison. And the newest member to our team, Daniel Coy, who is Chief of Forestry. We also have Tim Almagar, who's Chief of Community Engagement and Strategic Partnerships. And we have finally Tiara Brown, who's Chief of Marketing and Communication.
Real quick, Director, because I suspect all those 4 folks are going to get questions from us. If you all could populate these 4 seats up here so you have mics so we don't slow things down during the hearing. And Director, where is your, I'm blanking on her name, your Deputy Director for Recreation?
Unfortunately, she had a conflict and could not make this. That was pre-planned way before this schedule was made.
Totally understood, and I trust everything is okay with her?
Yes, sir.
Excellent, very good to hear. And Mr. Chief of Forestry Division, AKA City Arborist, AKA the person that we will likely all be communicating with the most. Yes, sir, right up here. We are very much looking forward to meeting with you and spending a great deal of time with you in a positive way. I hope that you and Mr. Deal prepared this gentleman for what awaits him.
I think he's well equipped. He's been in forestry for quite some time and has a lot of creative and innovative ways of moving forestry. But I think Daniel's been here now just under 2 months. Is that right?
A month and a half.
Month and a half, yeah. So So he's learned his way and he's jumping in fast.
Outstanding. Thank you.
All right. So with that being said, I will go through our slides relatively quick. The first slide that, just as always, we just want to continue to remind everyone of our inventory. We have 51 recreation centers, 262 parks, over 4,700 acres of parkland, 25 plus miles of hiking and biking trails, 116 basketball courts. Quite a large and robust inventory for our agency. The next, I want to just quickly, before we get into each of the budget line items, I just want to highlight some exciting things that occurred in 2021. Recreation restorations will continue to move forward with improving our facilities, which is one of our strategic goals. If you all remember our Rec 2025 plan, one of our focuses is on our places. We were able to renovate Bocheck, Towanda, Hilton, Cahill, and in collaboration partnership with Waterfront Partnership, renovate Rashfield. It's so important in the work that we do that we have strong partners, and that has been one of the commitments of our administration. Is making sure that we build on our partnerships, and to have a partner like Family League who help support and enhance our programming with $1 million investment and continue to support us with this additional funding to support our budget. But with this additional investment, we have been able to see over 290 brand new programs. Also, earlier last year, we did the ribbon cutting for the BGE field at Rebirth Park in conjunction with Cal, Ripken Senior Foundation, and South Baltimore Gateway Partnerships. Another exciting opportunity for us is that we have $67 million plus in construction costs in 2021, where we're getting ready to open the Druid Hill Aquatic Center next Saturday. Conservation, under our leadership of Sean has committed $900,000 in innovation funds to help continue to grow our Count Small zero waste production. And then finally, Baltimore City Rec and Park completed our reaccreditation with our National Recreation and Parks Association. So we're a national accredited organization. So from there, we will go into our budgets. The first one is administration. Not basically just going to highlight the recommended budget for this year is $7.4 million. Just a couple highlights there. For our fiscal 23 recommended budget, there's 4 general funded positions and the transfer of 7 positions. But one of the major highlights is our park rangers. One of the, if you all recall, there was a decision we had to make at some point in time to remove our current program. But majority of those individuals were seasonal employees. We're excited to bring this program back, but it is 5 FTEs, which will help us create continuity and consistency amongst our forestry division. The next service number is 645, which is our aquatics. This year, budget is $2.8 million. As I stated earlier, the big highlight is the Druid Hill Aquatic Center that will open next Saturday at 11 a.m. with our big splash. It's a phenomenal facility. If you have not been to Druid Hill, recommend everyone go by, look at it. But also, we understand as we continue to address our staffing shortages, one of the areas that's been hardest hit is lifeguards. And it's not a Baltimore City issue, it's a national issue of shortage of lifeguards. But what we did in conjunction with this administration and BMR is there's an additional $300,000 that we're using from table gains to support the increase in salaries to try to make us more competitive with other jurisdictions in the area. The next service number is 646, park maintenance. Park maintenance is home of our forestry, our park maintenance, our horticulture, our facility maintenance division. And one highlight there is that what we started doing last year, and we was able to continue to move those positions to get them in the right place in 2023's budget, but it's to develop a facility maintenance team. We now have our HVAC tech in-house to help support some of our challenges there. There's additional skilled labor positions that we are hiring for now and recruiting for. That's just going to help support our maintenance of our facilities in our parks throughout the agency. The next service number is 647, which is our youth and adult sports. This is where all of our citywide youth sports program is housed. Also, this is the service number where we fund the Charm City Games that we're hosting again this year. Look forward to that event. But again, it was important that we have Upton Boxing Center that's rich in history, but a lot of those positions were seasonal positions or part-time positions, and with the support of BB Martin administration, we're going to be able to move those into some FTEs, so that one of the things we're constantly talking about is how do we create continuity amongst our organization. And one of the things this agency has lived off for many years has been part-time and seasonal help. And the challenge is there's no consistency there because people come and go. So the support in bringing in these new FTEs will truly improve our overall operations. The next service is 648, which is our largest service, which is our community recreation operations. That's a $19.2 million budget. We're excited here because we're getting ready to open our second fitness and wellness facility, which will be at the Cherry Hill Rebirth later this summer. Also, one of the areas that we've continuously spoke with administration about is there's been unfunded mandates. Over the years, we've been asked to open facilities with no budgets, but this year, with the help of administration, we're going to take $1.2 million of the table games funding and commit it to these rec centers that were unfunded. And we understand when they're unfunded, that means you're pulling positions from other places just to make sure these facilities are operating. So we're really appreciative of that support so that we can properly staff our facilities and keep them operating. 649 is our next service. It's special facility maintenance. This is more of an enterprise fund. This is where all of our special facilities, from Myers to the Myers Pavilion to the Middle Branch Rowing Club, Carrie Murray, Shake and Bake Family Fun Center, as well as Mount Pleasant, are funded here. But this entire service line is funded through revenue. So, of course, just like the country experience, we're all moving back to levels of increasing our revenue. But, during the pandemic, a lot of these facilities was not operational during that time. Service number 650 is our horticulture division. That's $1.9 million. That's pretty much, that division is responsible for maintaining all of the city-owned flower beds, as well as managing and maintaining our conservatory, as well as our arboretum. And they do a phenomenal job in what they do on a daily basis. Service item 651 is our senior programming. And our seniors are one of our most active spaces and programs, and that is where we have 94 Golden Age clubs. And basically what Golden Age clubs is senior activities and senior programming at different rec centers, and that's led by Leslie, and the focus is on seniors age 50 and older. Between arts and craft, there's a lot of travel with our seniors, tournaments, and we want to just continue to look at ways that we can enhance and grow this program, and we're excited to be able to see seniors come back into the buildings, even if it's still slow because of the pandemic, but to be able to offer some opportunities that they can get out and be engaged. But during the pandemic, Leslie and her team did a phenomenal job of keeping our seniors engaged through virtual rec opportunities. Another one of our service areas that is extremely important is service number 652, which is our therapeutic recreation facility programming. That is the program that focuses on our youth and adults that have special needs or therapeutic recreation needs. And so our team for this year has a dedicated building. I want to really highlight this. Our therapeutic rec has had to move around the city, but what we did this year is we took one of our existing facilities and made it their dedicated home, and they're excited so that they can continue to grow the therapeutic recreation population, because that's a population I felt that we really need to put more attention on beyond just our seniors, and have opportunities for them to have a dedicated home. Our next service is our park program, and that's where our special events are housed out of. This is another one of those service numbers where revenue covers a lot of the expense, and we're starting to see that revenue bounce back because we're able to permit fields, we're able to get sporting opportunities back going there. So we're looking forward to that, continuing to grow and provide many different special event opportunities for our city. And then our last service request is urban forestry, 654, $5.6 million budget. Our urban forestry is responsible for all of our trees throughout the city, trees in the right of ways, as well as this crew. You know, I know I've heard people say many times about during the pandemic, but this is a crew that has never went home. Every storm, every issue, this crew has been out working to make sure that this service is provided. We do have contractors that we work with to help us support, but this is a division that sometimes they, you know, it feels like that they're not doing a job, but they're doing a phenomenal job, and I just need to highlight that because of the amount of work that they have to do and the amount of staff that they currently have and the resources that they have. So, Chairman Costello, that concludes the quick summary of our budget, and I look forward to the remainder of this discussion.
Thank you so much. Natasha, real quick, did we get a org chart and phone contact list for BCRP? We did. Excellent. We're good. Okay. I want to step through the responses to my May 14th letter. First one, forestry backlog, tree pruning, and dead unhealthy tree removal. In November 2021, the former chief of the forestry division committed to eliminating the one-year backlog plus all new work orders for tree pruning and dead unhealthy tree removal by May 2022. Please provide an update on status in writing by no later than May 31. That was a request from Councilman Stokes and Councilwoman Ramos. We were told in your May 27th letter that we are now nearing completion with some work orders in the last two clusters needing rework. We've reduced the backlog from 18 months to 6 months. Our goal remains to have nothing older than 2 months. The city's SLA is actually a lot longer than that, and increase the amount of proactive work as much as possible over time. When do we expect the backlog to get down to 2 months?
I will start this, and then Daniel, you can definitely jump in. Again, the reason that we have been able to reduce this backlog.
We understand the reason, and I think we appreciate it. I want to move through these quickly.
Okay.
We can talk in detail if you want, but I would say right now I'm just looking for when are we going to get it down?
So I can't give you a definite when we're going to continue to work with our contractors, but also it is going to become a resource issue too, because this backlog is something that was not fully funded, and so what we've been doing over the year is addressing this backlog. And we received the money this past budget year in surplus, and that's why we've been able to reduce the backlog. So we would like to continue to work with our administration. We have some suggestions. I think there is some funding that's in surplus right now from this projected budget year. We would like to speak with our administration about a proposal where we can hopefully be able to utilize some of that surplus to help expedite and get this down. But I don't have a definite date of when this backlog, because we just need to have more dialogue about the resources for it.
Sure. Before I go to Councilman Stokes, we need before the end of the night on Tuesday a date when the backlog's going to be eliminated. We're not telling you it has to be done tomorrow. I mean, the original commitment was May, previous month. I think we're all understanding of the challenges, the staffing, the resources, supply chain, COVID, we've been hearing that all week, and we know everyone in city government as well as outside of city government is experiencing that right now. But we do need a revised commitment. So what I would ask is that, Director, you can, caucus with your team and get back to us by call of business on Tuesday in writing a new deadline. I want to take a moment to acknowledge Councilwoman Odette Ramos, 14th District, Councilman Stokes.
Director Moore, 6 months to 18 months, thank you. Appreciate that. That's a real turnaround we're looking for. I also see in there that I mentioned that you had one machine that worked, but you have two, but still only one work. Am I correct?
Yes, sir. We have one that's in the shop now. Is that correct, Daniel? Still grinder, tree stump grinder.
Oh wait, hold on that.
Okay, hold on that.
Yeah, we're gonna come to that. That's
Okay.
one, yeah.
All right, well, we'll come back to that, but I'm happy from 6 months, from 18 months to 6 months, but whenever you can give us a date for the 2 months, we appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Just gonna second what the councilman said. That's tremendous improvement, and just keep working toward the 2-month time frame. Next item, forestry backlog, tree stump removal. In November of 21, the former chief of forestry committed to eliminating at least 50% of the backlog of tree stump removals by May of 2022. Please provide an update. This was a request from Councilman Stokes and Councilwoman Ramos. Last fall, our stump grinding contractor was found to be non-compliant when our contract received an emergency extension and forestry lost its ability to issue new stump grinding work to contractors. With our limited in-house crew, we can only perform a few stump removals, if any at all, as this takes our crew members away from SR requests to perform SR urgent work. Okay, long story short, you had a contractor's non-compliant. Who was the contractor?
The contractor that was non-compliant was Pittman.
Pittman?
Yes, that's correct. And so to answer that, we have been working with our procurement to secure a new contract. There was a protest the first time, so we had to rebid it. So I'm hoping that we're really close to securing that contract so that we can bring them online, and that will also help us with our tree maintenance as well as stump grinding.
Thank you. I want to recognize Councilman Ryan Dorsey, 3rd District member of the committee, as well as City Administrator Chris Shorter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I ask?
No. I'll get to you. Once.
Who protests the bid?
Yep, I got you. Do we currently have any other work with Pittman, the department?
No, we do not.
Why were they found to be non-compliant?
That's something I can get you an answer. I don't.
Excellent. When were they found to be non-compliant?
That was. I can get you an exact date. I don't want to give you a guesstimate, but it was in the October-November range. When we had
over 6 months ago.
Yes.
And at the time when you found them to be non-compliant, I assume you figured out how to terminate that contract and then started to seek a different contractor, correct?
Correct. There was a bid that had there was a bid opening back at that time, so we had started the process to execute a new contract, which will address the stump grinding as well as tree maintenance and other things. And like I said, we're working close with procurement, and I feel we're really close to moving something to BOE between the second bidding of that project.
I want to explain the eye rolling that I was doing when you were explaining your answer. That wasn't directed at you or anyone in your department. That was about procurement, which has been a recurring theme throughout hearings this year, Mr. Shorter, so everyone's aware. So you all have been working on a new procurement for this core service, tree stump removal, for over 6 months.
Yes, sir. We've been working with procurement and MBU. It's just not procurement. Once a bid goes in, it also has to go to MBU. So, but we are confident that we're gonna have something. I can't give you an exact date. I don't want to give you an exact date, but we are working close with procurement and MBU to make sure that our current bids meet and is compliant, so we can move that to BOE.
Okay. Natasha, before the end of the day on Tuesday, we'd like a written narrative explaining exactly what the status of the procurement efforts are to bring additional contractor support on to fulfill the commitment that was made in November of last year to get this down to 50%. Real quickly, do we know what it's currently at?
Daniel, do you,
The
you have
backlog since November?
the number of outstanding stumps?
I'm sorry, I do not have that number. I can tell you it's probably been growing because the tree removals that we have been doing have generated stumps. We, in addition to Eric's retirement and me coming in, we also had our GIS analyst about a month ago. He went back home to Ohio to take care of his family. So pulling that sort of data right now is a little rough, but we can certainly get you an estimate on that once we get that position filled.
Okay, and do we know why the Pittman, we already talked about that. Do we know, so when you went back out for, bid to procure contractor support to get this backlog back down like the department had committed, the bid was protested? Do we know why the bid was protested?
I would rather not. I can't speculate. I think that's something I can get
No,
you.
if you
I can
don't-
get you an answer. I can get you an answer on that.
Totally okay if you,
yes, sir.
if you don't have an answer. Colleagues, any questions? Councilman Schleifer, and then Dorsey,
I do.
and then Ramos.
Can you go back a couple slides, please?
What service?
Just keep going back.
Horticulture.
Okay, yeah, you can leave it on this one.
Wait, do you have a question about this?
Oh, which thing?
The stump grinding? We're staying on this. We're going to go through each item in the letter, and then we'll go for general questions from the
Okay,
council.
sure. I'll ask a stump grinding question.
But it should be related to this
Sure.
item, please, and thank you, Councilor.
Sure, yeah. So how do you not know how many stumps there are when we have an inventory online? This is like a question that comes up every day. It's like the most basic question that should be answered in a hearing like this. Do you have a ballpark figure?
Daniel, I'll take it. We do have a number, Councilman Stokes, but to his credit, he's just been here 6 months. I'm not making excuses for him, but it's just he's still learning a lot of what's happening in his area. But the last number that we had, it was just under 2,400 stumps throughout the city, the entire city, which we all know that the $100,000 that was committed in previous budget year is not going to remove 1,200 stumps. I just want to clarify that as well.
Wait, you said 1,200?
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying that number when
That was in November. The number was
it was around 2,400 stumps, but
Wait.
there was $100,000.
Director, please pause. You said 1,200, and then you said
No.
2,400.
All right, so let me explain to you. I'm getting to the full question. All right, so there was a little over 2,400 stumps total. But
As of when?
And as of last November, October
As of
timeframe.
November of 21.
So there was $100,000 that was earmarked for tree stump grinding, okay, in surplus. And the point I'm making is the goal was to get this down to 50%, and that is our that was our goal. But the cost for everything now has significantly increased. So to take $100,000 and realistically think that we was going to reduce that to 1,200 at that point in time with the resources we have was going to be challenging. And I just wanted to note that.
So how many did you remove with that 100,000?
Well, that's around the time when we had the tree stump grinding contract issue. So we have not removed, other than the stumps that we're doing in-house with our one stump grinder in our team. And I just want to say that the time that it takes to remove a stump, that means that we're taking that crew off of urgents, and other trees that are high priority as well. And I do understand your issue, and we've had many conversations around tree stumps, but our goal and our commitment is to work with our procurement team to get a contract in place so that we can get this moving.
You haven't honored any goal or any commitment since the day you got here. So how many stumps have you guys removed? How many stumps did you remove last year?
Well, Councilman Yates, I'm not going to go back and forth with you, but I think that's an inaccurate statement, sir, because there's things that you've asked of our agency for your community, and we have met those, sir. So, but I will get you an exact number of stumps that we have removed with the money, because there was a number of stumps that was removed. So I'll get you that exact number, and we'll break it down by districts.
Okay, can we, and we're going to get into the other statement that you made, but, and then the regular questions, but if you can, during this hearing, please look up how many stumps you removed in each calendar year for the past 3 years.
Councilman Schleifer, we will get you that information. I'm not going to commit that we'll get you that number before this hearing is over. I'm sorry, sir. I can't commit to that, but I can guarantee we can get you the number.
So let me jump in for a second. Director, thank you for your response, and Chair certainly understands your concerns about providing that right now and appreciates your commitment to get that after the hearing. Councilman, I just want to clarify your request. I think instead of calendar year, can we go by fiscal year? I think that's probably going to be easier for the agency.
You can go by any fiscal calendar, whatever amount of year you want. I want to know for every 365-day period of time, how many stumps have been removed for at least the past 1,000 days?
So Director,
Yes, sir.
let me clarify the request from the councilman. We're looking for the number of stumps that have been removed for fiscal year 2022 to date, which we're currently in, as well as fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 20. Councilman, does that meet your request?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay. Yep.
Could the director,
Microphone.
can the director just explain, I don't know much about about stump removal machines. If we could just have a little education of what is that process of removing stumps, I think that would be helpful.
I will yield to our Chief of Forestry to kind of give you a quick summary, Councilwoman, of the removal of stumps in that process.
Thank you.
So I don't want to get into the weeds too much because I could probably tell you way too much information about that. But typically you either have a machine on tracks, think of like a skid steer, Bobcat, something like that, or something that is towed behind a pickup truck. That latter is usually the more typical. There is a large, wheel on the work end of the machine, so opposite the cab of the truck. It will spin in this direction, away from the cab of the truck, so that's behind me. On that, there are teeth. It spins, as you could imagine, very quickly. It's large wheel, usually 20, 24 inches, something like that. It has teeth or hammers on it at intervals, and you go and you chip away from the stump. You have to start at an edge because you have to chip from the top down, and you have to make passes, and then you have to reset and go lower, and we need them ground to 24 inches so that we can replant trees, and that's 24 inches below the grade. So it's a very time-consuming process. They're also, Director Moore mentioned the rising costs. They're typically diesel-powered. Even gasoline doesn't really cut it. To my knowledge, there isn't an electric stump grinder out there yet. So with rising fuel prices, our stump grinding prices are also going up quite a bit.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Back to Councilman Schleifer.
So in previous years, we got a commitment from Rec and Parks that every tree that was taken down, any one we contracted, it would also include the removal of the stump. Has that been honored?
Some of the trees have been completely removed, yes, sir. And some, our outgoing forestry chief made a decision because of the expense that it was going to reduce the number of trees, that he did revert back to removing trees and leaving stumps in some cases. So it was a case by case. But yes, in the current contract and the contract going forward, that will be renewed at some point in time. It will give us options to remove the whole tree, to remove the tree and leave the stump, or if it's just a stump grinder, they'll be able to go in and grind the stump. So yes, sir.
So since we had a commitment from Rec and Parks, you said sometimes they did, and then the previous forestry director made a decision to revert back to the old ways. So I assume the answer is then no, that you guys did not remove every stump along with every tree that was removed as per the agreement that Rec and Parks Forestry had with the city council. Is that accurate?
As I can say, is that it was a case-by-case situation, but in some cases, yes, we did remove the whole tree.
And in some cases, you didn't?
That's correct.
Okay, so that wasn't honored. So when all of this started 4 years ago, and we started going through the stumps and everything associated with that, one thing that I discovered, which is a matter of fact, is that the city has been paying out lawsuits that cost far more than the cost to remove these stumps. And that was the catalyst, part of the catalyst, to removing these stumps in an efficient and effective manner, one that also reduces the city liability, because the city is liable anytime we're on notice and have a reasonable amount of time to remove a liability and we fail to do so. And so that was the reason. So when I hear that a forestry director, the previous forestry director, was able to make a decision to ignore the city council and the then mayor who made that decision along with the city council, with your commitment as the director, that's very troubling, because what you're telling me now is that you under your leadership, the previous forestry director just created a bunch of other liabilities across the city that we are on notice about and that we are now liable for. And when I hear us talking about the increased costs of diesel fuel and some of these other things, when we go back a few years ago, and costs have certainly increased in the past 3 years, the past 3 months costs have increased. This department told us many times that it was you were going to make this a priority to resolve this issue. You said you needed help from the city council. The city council gave you help. The problem that we have now is that you guys fail to hold your end of the bargain. We were told, hey, we need, from your forestry director, Mr. Deal, we were told that what it would take is $100,000 a year for 3 years. That's his numbers, not mine. I didn't make up the numbers. I don't know. I mean, I was going based off what he said. And so we started doing that. But now, obviously, the costs have gone up. So now you guys are back to the city council saying, well, now we have all these other challenges and other costs, but you guys didn't hold your end of the bar. If you did, we wouldn't be talking about 2,400 tree stumps left in the city. We'd be talking about under 1,000 at this point. And I don't know, were you aware that he decided to make a decision that was contrary to what the mayor and city council agreed to in a public setting like this, that moving forward, at that point, that every tree that was removed, the stump would be coming with it right away? Were you aware that he did that?
Some of those, yes, those decisions. So let me clarify for you a little bit more, sir, if you recall. In the previous, when we removed trees and left stumps, there were stumps left in right-of-ways. There were stumps left in visible areas that had an increased liability to the city. When he made this decision, and it was a resource decision, sir, and I have to continue to harp on that. Sometimes we have to make decisions based on resources because there's a high demand for trees to be removed. I gave him the latitude to make that decision if it was not in a high risk, high volume area, that that he could leave the stump, but to make sure that in those high risk, high volume areas, that when they remove the tree, to remove the stump. And then there's cases where where they may have to come back because of either, in the most recent cases, because the current contract, until we get a new one in place, does not allow them to remove the stumps. It's an extension to maintain the existing trees from storms and other things. So yes, I was aware, and it was a resource decision that I support because, again, he was making these decisions and making sure that any trees that there was a stump in a high area that had a high level of risk, if for greater good to remove that stump. But if it was not, in some cases, we'll have to come back to that. So yes, sir.
So wouldn't it have been fair, and in efforts of partnership, to come back to the city council and say, hey, look, I just want to give you a heads up. Here's the situation we're in. So instead of us continuing to peddle bad information in our community associations and our communities based on trusting you that you were going to honor your commitment, shouldn't you just come back to us and say, look, I know we made this commitment. I know it's a priority, especially me. I freaking rolled the tree stump into this council chambers and got up here and, and made it a priority at the request of Eric Deal and at the request of your agency. And I did my part. So don't you think you guys owed me the respect to come back to me and come back to this city council and say, hey, I know you worked hard to get us exactly what we had asked for from the previous administrations, and we made a commitment to you, one that we together publicly stated on the media, we publicly stated in writing. We're peddling, I'm peddling a false narrative based on trusting you and believing you. So why wouldn't you come back to me and tell me, Councilman, look, I know we had a commitment that the contracts would have it. We ran into a hiccup, which I know you ran into a hiccup because I exposed the hiccup because there were trees that were getting removed and the stumps were being left. So don't you think you should have came back to us?
Councilman, I feel we have a strong communication and open line of communication with council. If that was not relayed to you, then yeah, we should have came back and relayed that information to you. So yes, we should have.
Okay, and then one last thing on this, and then I'll give it back. I have a very hard time trusting and believing that anything will be different. And I want to tell you a current example that we're talking about. I don't even need to say I don't even know the location off the top of my head. I'm sure Daniel does. Hopefully you do as well. I had one tree stump in my district that I had community coming to me. It's a liability. It's a huge problem. I followed the proper channels. Got nowhere. I continued to raise it up. There is probably 5 members of this executive team who are sitting right here who are aware of a one tree stump that I'm referencing that you guys in writing have committed to me multiple times, multiple people sitting here. I'm not going to name names. I appreciate that you guys are looking into it and working on it, but I had commitments that one stump would be removed multiple times. And you guys walk in here today, and I receive an email from the constituents saying, hey, we heard back from multiple members of this executive team that it would be removed tomorrow, and then tomorrow, and then tomorrow, and tomorrow. Well, there's been a lot of tomorrows, and it's still sitting there. So if the entire executive team of Rec and Parks can't figure out how to get rid of one tree stump, why shouldn't we, and this is a serious question, why shouldn't we just take this entire forestry and just outsource it completely? Like many other jurisdictions have most of their forestry almost exclusively outsourced. Baltimore County is a prime example. Baltimore County's forestry budget is prime example. Baltimore County is a lot larger than Baltimore City. Why don't we follow their lead and just outsource this stuff? Because if this team can't get one tree stump removed, why shouldn't we just outsource the entire forestry department?
There again, I can't give you a suggestion for yourself. I just think that would be a great mistake. One is that the cost to privatize a lot of this work will be triple and double the cost of what we're talking about now, sir. And again, as I'll go back to and I'll stand by, our forestry team, regardless of some of the challenges that they face, with the resources that they have, $5.6 million to manage the number of trees that they manage for this city, I feel they do a phenomenal job. So that's my thoughts on that one, sir.
Okay, we're gonna go to, are we still on this topic, Councilman Dorsey? Councilman Dorsey and then Councilwoman Ramos. You good, Council VP?
On this subject,
Yes.
I just want to say,
Well, let me go to, I'm gonna come back to you. Councilman Dorsey, and let's please keep this brief. We've got a couple more items in this letter to get through.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll echo a couple things here. I too was laboring under the assumption that DOT was good for its word, that stumps were being included with trees. I didn't know that that agreement had changed. That's disappointing. I also was not communicated to about that. That said, I want to say that I love forestry, and I think that you've, taken a huge hit with the retirement of Eric and the departure of Charlie. They'll be sorely missed, but I know that you have excellent staff, and I look forward to getting to know and working with your new director. You said that a bid went out and was protested, and that delayed the contract coming together. Who protested that bid?
Councilman Dorsey, first, thank you for those kind words for our forestry team, but I don't have that information in front of me, but I can work with procurement to get a
Director,
response.
Councilman, hang on one second. And I think we had asked for that. Natasha, if we hadn't, I skipped over it, but included in the response to this topic from the administration and Rec and Parks, we'd like to know who protested it, who protested the new procurement, when, and why. Please and thank you. Councilman?
And along with that, this is strictly, so I'm clear, this is strictly a stump removal contract?
No, sir. It's our contract for tree maintenance, tree planting, and stump removal. It's the big contract. It's a maintenance contract.
Okay. And is this the contract that was finally awarded on the by the Board of Estimates this week?
I believe it was pulled.
I'm sure that it is.
If it is, then yes.
Okay, then I know who protested.
But there again, don't hold me. I can verify.
Okay. So it's not just that we didn't have any tree stumps removed over the last however many 6 months under contract. It's that we didn't have a tree planting contract for the fall of 2021 or the spring of 2022. Literally no contract to plant any trees at all. I'm emphasizing this to, I believe, Councilman Costello's point that we have a serious procurement problem. I don't think that the problem of us not having this contract is the fault of Rec and Parks. My understanding is that Rec and Parks did its due diligence to correct the problem with the contract that was the cause for protest, and that the delay in getting this contract was entirely on the procurement office. I guess I'm just trying to underscore that point here right now. That I believe that Rec and Parks is trying to do its best here and is subject to somebody else's problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and apologies for being a little late. On this issue, in one of the briefings that BBMR gave us right before Taxpayers Night, I believe, there was a unused allocation of $900,000 that under Rec and Parks for the forestry backlog. $900,000 that came from previous fiscal year to this one and then will be carried over to the next one. Are we, given this conversation, and again, I know I entered late, that because of these contract issues and everything else, that $900,000 has not been used at all?
That's a great question, Councilwoman Ramos, and I actually heard that was a question that you may have, and I asked our financial team to explore this, and from my understanding, that's an inaccurate statement. But Ken, can you shed light of where we are with this funding right now?
Good morning, Councilwoman.
Morning.
With regards to that spending, as of May 10th, the last update from our fiscal report from BBMR, that $900,000, first of all, has been, well, not all of it has been spent in the sense that, for example, the $100,000 for stumps, that has been expended because the line item for that particular funding is down about $65,000 out of 1.03 million. So we have expended the funding for the stump. With regards to the $800,000, which was added for tree pruning, that line item is currently being spent because what happened, the invoices were being delayed, and I don't know of the date in which from which you have quoted this particular number. However, as of May 10th, there is evidence that the funding has been spent. I can't tell you exactly to what level because that was the last report that we have received. So in essence, there is no such a fact that $900,000 has been in forestry and has been unspent.
So, other words, Councilwoman Ramos, is when you may have that number may have been there valid in the account is because there's invoices outstanding that they're going through that's being processed because as we stated, a lot of that money includes this 12-month backlog that we've reduced. So that may have been on the books when BBMR shared that with you, but that is not what we feel is an accurate number based on the number of outstanding invoices we have with the current contractor that has been addressing our backlog.
BBMR.
Maggie Keenan, BBMR. So the 900,000 is mixed in with their 22 budget. So I can't tell you right now if the 900,000 has been spent solely on forestry. We can get back to you on that. But the agency does have an overall surplus in the millions.
Not from forestry.
Exactly.
Overall, I just want to clarify. Overall, I'm sorry.
I got it. I understand, but I think you're hearing. Well, it would be great to get, Mr. Chair, an accounting of that 900,000 that we saw in the last BBMR briefing, and obviously how much that was of forestry and it hasn't been spent. That would be helpful. And Director Moore, I think, and your team is hearing from us how frustrated we are about this. We get, we have spreadsheets upon spreadsheets of tree backlog, stump backlog, and I know we're not the only office. And we want to try to figure out how to support making this happen. Obviously, there's a procurement issue. But we want to figure out how to make this happen because it's, I know the city has paid out at least, in my district, because of falling limbs on people's cars, has at least paid out, $50,000, if not more. So it's a liability that the city has, and it's not solely on you, it's the whole system that has to address it. And then we're ending up paying more because people's cars are getting and getting damaged, not just their cars, but their themselves. So, and then of course the tree stump issue, it's a trip hazard. It's a liability, it's huge. And so I appreciate your time going through all of this with us, but we need a solution to the issue. So, Mr. Chair, I don't know if we're going to I guess we're going to have a separate hearing about procurement or something, but this is a big deal.
I can't speak to that, other than that I share your frustration and can confirm that you have all those spreadsheets.
Yes.
Director, I think we've kind of grinded this issue down.
Pun intended.
You understand. You understand our frustration, and I think there's variety of requests associated with this, so we can get some clarity to the council by no later than Tuesday, June 7th, 11:59 p.m. And we need some new commitments. And when we ask for commitments, we're asking for timeframes. Appreciate it. Next item, plan for procuring additional tree stump grinders. Please provide an inventory of all machinery related to the removal of tree stumps. Specifically, it is the committee's understanding, excuse me, is the committee's understanding that there is only one piece of equipment that performs this function, and that piece of equipment is frequently offline due to necessary repairs. Please provide a plan to procure additional equipment to adequately and consistently perform this core activity. This request is from Councilman Stokes. Your response was forestry has 2 stump grinders, but one of them is nearing the end of its useful lifespan. Additionally, forestry has a limited number of people trained and qualified to run the stump grinders. The Department of Recreation and Parks is working with the administration to address the equipment and personnel needs required to improve stump grinding services. This is not a plan. A plan is a time frame and the resources that are necessary and all of the contingencies to make it happen. Are you able to provide a plan today?
Today?
Today, right now? No. Okay. Can you provide a plan by Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. in writing?
We'll work extremely hard to come up with a plan for the additional equipment that could possibly use as well. We'll work extremely hard to develop that by Tuesday, June 7th.
Thank you. Mr. Shorter, can we get a plan for how we're going to get the appropriate number of stump grinders? We just need a plan, right? We're not asking for we want a date for when we can. All right, let me start over. I'm sorry, Mr. Shorter. The committee would like a plan delivered to it by no later than Tuesday, June 7th at 11:59 p.m. That plan should include a narrative around this issue, a list of existing equipment, what equipment needs to be replaced, and how we are going to replace that equipment, any contingencies associated with that, how that equipment is going to be replaced. Are we going to use ARPA dollars? Are we going to put it out to bid? Are we going to use surplus money, whatever it is? And it should have all contingencies associated with each step of that in order for us to walk away feeling confident that Rec and Parks and the administration are going to resolve this deficiency, because there's a deficiency here, and I think you would agree with that, Director. So we have to resolve it. So we want to be assured that you are going to resolve it, and it's more than likely that you need administration support from the various. You just need administration support. Can you provide that plan by Tuesday, Mr. Shorter?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Council. Yes, I will work with the director. I won't be providing the plan. The director and the leadership team at Rec and Parks will. As the director has said this morning, they are certainly constrained, but we will absolutely, as in all the other deadlines that have been provided, meet this one as well.
Mr. Shorter, I appreciate your attention to this issue, which is very important to the council. Thank you very much.
Sure.
And Director, I want to stress again, when we ask for a plan, we're asking for a deadline. It would not be the first time that a municipal agency passed a deadline, right? We'll cross that bridge when it comes, but we need a firm date for when each of these steps are going to occur. Councilman Stokes?
Real quick, Director Moore, I know you have 2, one don't work. How many additional grinders you need? Because 2, if one break down, again, you still only have 1 left. So the question is how many you really need, or how many additional grinders you need if you're talking about your backlog.
Councilman Stokes, I would prefer to let me defer to my team, work with my team on a plan and get it back to you on the number. But I also want to stress that beyond just and as part of that plan will be not just purchasing and procuring equipment, but also the timeline it's going to take for us to train the proper number of staff to be able to use and operate that stump grinder as well.
That's fine, but I just think you need some additional grinders. That's all I understand.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Schleifer.
Literally my last thing on this, on the stumps. I know how difficult it is to grind up each stump. We've been out on the street grinding a stump, and I've seen many of them, and I've learned more about stumps over the past 4 years than I ever thought I'd ever want to know about them. And so if for some reason, and again, what kind of gets me is how from when we started the conversation to now, the costs have grown exponentially. That had the original plan just been followed, it would be a whole different situation. I mean, the cost per stump and the different sizes that were broken down originally, you know, how many in each category of the small, medium, large stumps. I mean, the cost might even be double at this point from what it was 4 years ago. I'd like to put something on the table. If between now and Tuesday, when you guys are looking into this, it seems like an overwhelming task or one that Rec and Parks just doesn't feel confident that they could manage, my good colleague over here from the 3rd District and I would be more than happy to do something a little unconventional and partner and take over the leadership of removing these 2,400 stumps, take over the management of it, and all we would need, we will outsource it, we will manage it, we will follow through, and we will make sure that these stumps are all removed. I think it'd probably take 2 years, no more than 2 years, to remove all 2,400 of these, while also incorporating the ones that you guys remove from the public right-of-ways. And so if Rec and Parks does not feel that they can manage this, Councilman Dorsey and I, Councilman Dorsey came up with a great name, Find Them and Grind Them. We will manage the stump removal process on behalf of Rec and Parks and the administration. So just so you know, that offer's on the table.
Councilman, thank you for the comment. Appreciate it. Council Vice President Middleton.
I just want to say, as you continue to say you have limited in-house crew, this is a very good time to add to your performance measures and goals to implement in-house apprenticeship program, not outsourcing. We want to, this is an excellent way to create government jobs in landscaping and so on in-house. And I agree that this keeps focusing back to a procurement problem, but I think that, you know, Rec and Parks, I'm telling you, this is a good segue to implement your program and add to your future performance measures and goals.
Mr. Chairman, quickly, if I can just respond, I'm gonna just yield to my chief of staff, but they can give us an update about a tree trimmer apprentice program that we have in place now.
Yep, so we actually do have a tree trimmer apprentice program, and we have one of our apprentices who is learning how to do the stump grinder. But I would be remiss if I don't bring up, we have challenges in that space too. So it's a 2-year-long program. We have had difficulty with our employees being able to complete the program and then to refill it. So we are trying to grow in-house. We are working through procurement to get outsourcing assistance, but we have a tree trimmer program. We've had it for a number of years. We have 5 positions. I can tell you we've had limited success because of the rigor of staying in the program. The rigor of being subject to random drug testing. So it's happening. We're hiring folks. They're getting to 6 months. We lose them to a positive drug test, or we lose them to some other issue where they don't want to return to work. So we are working internally to continue to grow that program. But as a good chief of staff, the human capital crisis we're experiencing is nothing I've seen in my professional career. It's not illusory, it's not for fake, but we're working really hard to grow our own. So we are doing that, and if you have any additional resources you'd like to pass on, we'd be more than happy to receive them, but we want to put that caveat. They're there and they're being trained, and for the stump grinding particularly, it's a skill set, right? It is not just you could take any old person off the team and have them do that. So the timeline is going to take to us to skill up a staff, right? We'll take some time, and we'll talk about that in our plan when we are able to give it on Tuesday. But the human capital thing is a real thing for us.
as the school system is revamping their career technology education programs, this is another good segue to connect with those CTE schools and get those students that, want to, move into, have an interest in landscaping and things. It would be a good conversation with the school system, with the career technology programs that are, that you can start or connect in schools like Forest Park High School, and we do have some other training schools around the city.
Thank you, Madam VP. We're going to jump to the next item on the list. Falstaff Elementary Middle School playground renovations. In June of 2021, the administration and BCRP committed to full renovations of the playground at Falstaff Elementary Middle School. This work has not yet been started. Please provide a complete schedule by May 31st. You note that design proposals have been received and are scheduled to be shared with Councilman Schleifer on 5/31. Councilman, I'll get to you in 1 second. Let me get through all of it. Following conversations with the law department over a lack of jurisdiction on our part to proceed and build the playground, a right of entry will need to be executed with Baltimore City Public School System. Number 1, master blanket contracts for 4 separate playground vendors for this and other playground sites scheduled for renovation are scheduled to be submitted by June 3rd, 2022. Fortuitous timing. Number 2, bid proposals are being prepared for submission in adherence with Bureau of Purchasing Board of Estimate protocols. Number 3, once contacts proposals are approved, Finance and BOE, the vendor will order the equipment, 12 to 20 weeks for manufacturing and shipping, and 4 weeks for installation. I want to thank you for providing actual hard dates. Were you in touch with Councilman Schleifer on May 31?
The date got the meeting.
Mike, see, I told you someone was going to do it.
Yes, our team has met with Councilman Schleifer. It wasn't on the 31st. Was it the 31st? Because the meeting was originally scheduled and it got rescheduled. So yes, we have met with him and shared the designs with him.
Let me turn it to Councilman Schleifer. Are you in a good place on where things are at with this one?
Yes, we did meet. Thank you, Jenny, for coordinating that. This has been, as you know, 2 years in the making. We had commitments in the budget for the past 2 years. From this administration finishing it off and, previously getting it started. And so it's certainly long overdue. I don't love the timeline. The goal that we had set out originally was to have this up in place before the kids at Falstaff Elementary Middle went back to school this past year. And now my concern is that it's not going to be done by the time they get back for school next year. It's just really unfair for the kids, and I think that we're a large city and it's a large agency that I think these vendors can find a way to get this up and running before the first day of school. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. Next item, Mullin Park General Capital and Maintenance Activities. In September 2021, the department committed to complete general capital and maintenance activities at the park, including turf repair, fence repair, street light removal, and stage amphitheater installation. Please provide a complete schedule for the completion of this work by no later than December 31st of 2022, request from Councilman Conway. You write, park maintenance will replace 20 feet of fencing and repair the gateway for vehicular access. The light poles currently located in the field will be removed once the power source is determined. The 4 existing benches will be repaired. Number 2, there are currently no capital funds allocated for this project. Understanding of the stage and field grading request, engineering and stormwater management will be required. Number 3, community outreach design and engineering will be required to complete the field and amphitheater renovations. This would include reviews, approvals, and advertisement for construction. The estimated cost for this is $100,000. Construction costs would be determined subsequently. I appreciate the level of detail. Councilman Conway is not here to comment. What I will say is this is not a complete schedule. Please, Natasha, Rec and Parks on the Mullin Park General Capital and Maintenance Activities. I'm asking Rec and Parks to provide a complete schedule as previously requested for completion by December 31 of 2022. That schedule should include steps that need to occur and any contingencies, including identification of funding or other operational / logistical challenges, such as identifying an electrical source, which is not an uncommon problem in the city of Baltimore and everywhere else on the planet. So, excellent. We're good there? Everyone's good with getting a schedule? All right, thank you. Capital, North Harford Park Basketball Court, resurfacing. In June of 2021, the administration committed to resurfacing 2 basketball courts at North Harford Park. Initial construction has started but is not completed. Please provide a complete schedule by May 31 that commits this work to be completed by no later than end of fiscal 22. You responded, construction began in early May and is ongoing. Project completion is estimated for mid-July. That is a schedule. Excellent. Thank you. Councilman Dorsey, this is your district.
Yeah, we're good on this. My understanding is that the asphalt needs to be laid and then requires some time to cure before the paint can be applied to it, but that everything is moving forward as basically as rapidly as possible.
Excellent. Director Moore, thank you to you and your team for advancing this one along. Next item, Dewey's Recreation Center basketball courts, resurfacing and fencing. In June of 21, the administration and BCRP committed to resurfacing 2 basketball courts and installation of new fencing around these courts. The work has not yet been started. Please provide a complete schedule by May 31st for completion of this work by no later than the end of fiscal 2022. This request is from Councilman Conway. Your response is that the department has obtained a quote from our on-call court surfacing vendor. Extension of the current contract is being processed, and then a purchase order will be issued. Please note there are several sites in the queue ahead of this location, so completion by the end of FY22 is unlikely.
So basically what we're saying is that we've done a due diligence to get the quote from our own call, but there's a blanket. Now we're asking, it's going through procurement to extend the current contract to add additional funding so that we can get a PO issued. Similar to Councilman Dorsey's court, last year weather became a factor where we couldn't get that in until the beginning of the season. But the contractor does have this court, so we will work. It's going to be hard to get a schedule until I can get a PO that can be issued. Then the contractor can give us a realistic timeline of completion.
When can you provide us a draft schedule? Can you provide us a draft schedule by Tuesday of how you anticipate this moving along so that we can achieve completion?
I would say I can provide you a schedule based on we'll have a conversation with procurement and see how long it's going to take for us to get this extension approved, and try to base a schedule off of that by working with our contractors. But I will put that caveat: it's going to be contingent upon us getting this extension to their existing contract to add additional funding to issue the PO. But yeah, I can by Tuesday.
And so we'll have a written narrative response by Tuesday, June 7th at 11:59 p.m.
Okay.
That works? Thank
Yes,
you,
sir.
sir. Appreciate it. Next request. Recreation Center field trip funding. Please provide a plan to dedicate funds to expand capacity for field trips associated with programs currently in place at recreation centers. This request comes from Councilman Stokes. You write, this season, $54,000 has been allocated for field trips. This funding is provided by the Family League. First question for clarification. When you say this season, do you mean the summer, fiscal year? What?
So it's for this summer, yes, sir.
For this summer.
Yes.
So it's covers funding sources from Family League for both fiscal 22 and 23, correct?
For 21 and 22. Yes.
22 and 23. Okay,
Yes.
got it. Councilman Stokes.
Thank you. I'm glad to see that you do have some money, but I'm so glad that Administrator Shorter is here. You know, we talk about our young people and how they do well in summer camp, but Recreation Park's budget is only based on salaries and benefits. So how are we going to give those opportunities to our young people when they can't even go to a trip outside of the neighborhood? And I've been asking Bob, our budget director, about putting not just in one rec center, all rec centers should have some funding for our young people. I had to last year at Cecil, Mr. David, who's doing a wonderful job over at Cecil Rec Center. I had to get CDC to pay for a trip because them young people did very well in the summer camp in Cecil. And the reason why I had to go somewhere else because there's no funding in rec and parks for no programming for our young people. And we always on the news talking about helping our young people. They got to do this. They got to have some programming. They got to go somewhere. But then when you look at rec and parks budget, it's only salaries and benefits. Where are we going to invest in our young people? We invest in employees, and we better give them some raises too, because we're going to start losing them to rec directors too. And I've been hearing that a lot. A lot of our rec directors been offered jobs outside of Baltimore City because of the salary. So we don't pay our rec directors, then we don't have money for our young people in this city that go outside of the rec center or go somewhere and enjoy themselves right now. So CAO Short, I'm glad you're here. We need to address this and not just talk about it. Now, hopefully, we can come back and talk about this, but we'll have some money in the budget, one, for our employees, and two, definitely for our rec centers so they can create programs and take our young people outside of the rec centers where they participate the summer, and not just summertime, and the wintertime. So I'm glad that the Family League give you $54,000, but that's, what is that? If you talk about every rec center in the city, you only got $54,000. That's nothing. That's what, maybe 2 rec centers, or maybe 3, maybe 1. So, Mr. Short, I would like the administration to work with me, work with Director Moore to find some more funding. And I have shared this with Budget Director Bob, and he said he will work with us. But we have to do this not for our employees, but all rec centers in this city. Our young people need some opportunities. And if we don't have money for the opportunities, we just sitting here blowing smoke. Thank you.
Next item in the letter, and I believe this is the last one, Memorandum of Understanding for Rashfield Operations and Maintenance. Please provide an MOU with Waterfront Partnership of Baltimore with a mutual agreement in writing that is prepared to be submitted to the Board of Estimates for final approval with support from BCRP by no later than May 31st. This MOU should outline an adequate agreement for multi-year funding to cover appropriate operations and maintenance of the park, along with delineation of responsibilities between BCRP, WPOB, and any other relevant city agencies, including but not limited to the Department of Transportation and the Department of Public Works. This was my request. The response that I received was BCRP is currently in discussion with the administration to identify appropriate funding for Rashfield. This response is inadequate. My expectation is that there is an MOU that is drafted, that is delivered to me, that is approved for form and legal sufficiency by the law department, is agreed to in principle by both your agency, any other relevant city agencies, and the Waterfront Partnership of Baltimore. I will take care of the funding mechanism, as I mentioned to you 2 days ago on the phone, 3 days ago now. And as I mentioned to Ms. Morgan a month ago, I need to have an MOU. There are issues independent of the funding stream that deal with responsibility and right of entry and things of that nature that must be worked out with Waterfront Partnership. You had told me on Tuesday of this week that you are actively working with Waterfront Partnership. That is not the case. Waterfront Partnership has not had a discussion with you all in at least 1 year. In addition, the Mayor's Office of Government Relations last evening told me that there was no draft MOU. A draft MOU was provided to me by Lori Schwartz, President of Waterfront Partnership. As I mentioned to the Director of Government Relations last evening, my expectation is that we have an in-person meeting today at City Hall, myself, the Director, and anyone else that the Director or the administration deems appropriate from city government to be in that meeting, along with Lori Schwartz, to start to hash out a draft MOU that is eventually going to be approved for form and legal sufficiency, and eventually is going to be agreed to in principle And once a funding source is identified, which will be identified by myself and the administration within the next week, will be prepared to be submitted to the BOE for final approval. That is the total scope of what I'm asking for. 7 years ago, the City of Baltimore asked the Waterfront Partnership of Baltimore to deliver a world-class inclusive park at Rash Field. Waterfront Partnership went out and raised the money to do that with a commitment from the city that if they raised private dollars, there would be an executed MOU around maintenance at this brand new world-class inclusive facility. We, Waterfront Partnership, and other community leaders, and Senate President Ferguson and several others raised $17 million to build that park. And the city made contributions to it, and I'm deeply grateful to this administration, Mayor Scott, and previous administrations, former Mayor Young, former Mayor Pugh, and former Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake, for helping to cobble together that funding. But the Waterfront Partnership did what it was asked. It built a world-class inclusive park. It delivered it ahead of schedule. It delivered it under budget, and it did so by grossly exceeding the city's MBE and WBE goals, which is something that, if anything, we've learned this week, in addition to our frustration with ARPA spending, which has nothing to do with your department. City agencies, despite the fact that you probably have one of the one or two best capital people in city government sitting right behind you in Adam Borman, city agencies are not capable of, because procurement is severely broken, which is a recurring theme which we've been discussing with as Mr. Shorter has been participating in these hearings. So we are now asking Waterfront Partnership to go out and build a second world-class facility. Senate President Ferguson and delegates from the 46th Legislative District went out and secured $3 million this legislative session to start toward the $14 million raise for Phase 2. I am quite confident that with Senate President Ferguson's leadership, Lori Schwartz's leadership, and the support of Mayor Scott and this administration, that we are going to raise that money lickety-split. But we're not going to do that without an MOU. I'm prepared. I want to be explicitly clear, in no uncertain terms, as I said to the director of the Mayor's Office Government Relations last evening. Moving forward, we will have an in-person meeting every single business day until we have a draft MOU. And I will hold up the entire city of Baltimore's $3.2 billion operating budget if this request is not met. Director, I'll turn it over to you now.
So, Councilman Costello, thank you for your summary of this. But I do want to clarify that the information you received that we have not spoken to Waterfront in over a year is inaccurate. My chief of staff meets with Laura Schwartz regularly, and they talk about many different things, to include currently our department is responsible for the cleaning of the restrooms every day in that facility. So we're confident. We are open to negotiating and working with Waterfront. As I shared with you Tuesday, there has been conversations of an MOU, and there's a draft. And actually, I have also shared forward to you a copy of that draft this probably in the last 15, 20 minutes. So I want to let you know that I have forwarded that to you as well. And if there's a meeting scheduled today, I will adjust my schedule and we will be here accordingly. But I do want to clarify that we have been working in good faith and working with Waterfront. And I feel that we're in a good place with Waterfront and have a really good working relationship. So I just wanted to clarify that, and we're willing to work as I committed to you on Tuesday.
Understood. I appreciate you sending over the draft MOU. I was originally told that this language did not exist. I appreciate that Waterfront Partnership has provided this document. They provided this to me a couple days ago. I am reassured that your chief of staff sent it to me, so that tells me that we're moving forward on the same page. I appreciate your willingness and flexibility in your schedule to meet with us today. I will get you a time for that meeting prior to the conclusion of this hearing. and I look forward to meeting with you. And it sounds like you are amenable to my request and fully understand in no uncertain terms what my position is on this matter.
We are, and I just think we just need to work through. I know you're saying that. I just want to highlight this that yes, one, we're willing to work as we've committed to this, but also that we've had conversations with Waterfront about the funding levels of the dollar amount that they're asking for. And is that a realistic number based on some research that our team has done? We feel that number is far north of what should be used for a park, but we're willing to continue this conversation and work out something.
As I appreciate that, and I'm in receipt of your comment. I understand what you have just said to me. That's first. Second, as I previously said in my introductory remarks on this topic, I will take care of the funding source.
Okay.
I will work that out directly with senior leadership from Mayor Scott's administration. What I need for you to be focused on is not the funding, but is the items that are in the MOU and reaching mutual agreement with Rec and Parks. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Excellent. And we are clear on what the consequences are or result is to this item not being completed, correct?
We understand what you've stated in this hearing, yes.
Thank you, Director. I deeply appreciate that. We're now going to move into, hang on one second. We've been joined by Councilman Mark Conway from the 4th District. I'm going to Councilman Stokes for questions in 1 second. I just want to take care of a couple of quick housekeeping items. Councilman Conway from the 4th District has joined us. Councilman, on the item for Mullin Park General Capital and Maintenance Activities, which is on your, yep, there you go, page 3 at the top. It seems like Rec and Parks has provided some detail. I'm going to ask you to hold your comment. Just let me share with you the update that the director provided, and then when we get to questions for you, we can drill down a little more. But in short, the administration and/or Rec and Parks will be providing a response by no later than 11:59 p.m. on Tuesday, June 7th, that will provide more clarification in this item. In addition, they are going to do the same on the Dewey's Recreation Center basketball courts resurfacing and fencing. I would ask you, because you are more familiar with those two capital projects, to address those in your comments / questions when we get to you. Thank you very much, Councilman. We're gonna jump into general questions now, 2 questions per member. And we are going to go to, in this order, Councilman Stokes, Ramos, Middleton, Schleifer, Dorsey, and Conway. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a request to also about a meeting with Director Moore, Bob, Budget Director, CA Short, about some funding for our rec centers for our young people. Did you get that request, Marguerite? Thank you. Director Moore, I have, my first question is, can you talk about MOED's plan for $30 million in ARPA funding you received, and how will that work toward expanding youth works? And what are the plans for maintaining that level of investment?
I'm sorry.
Can you talk about MOED's plan for $30 million in ARPA funding you received, and how will that work toward expanding youth works?
Unfortunately, Councilman Stokes, it wouldn't be fair for me to respond to that because I'm not familiar with the $30 million ARPA request that you're saying MOED is presenting. I haven't been a part of those conversations. But I can say for our agency that we'll be willing to work with Director Perkins Combs in any way possible to help serve youth in Baltimore. But that's the best I can say at this time on that.
Okay. Just concerning staff training, given that staff members must interact with community at various levels, how much training and emphasis is placed on building relationships, and what are the success metrics?
It's a matrix, you're saying?
What are the success metrics?
For staff training?
Yes.
So a part of our Rec 2025 plan is to invest in staff development. So far, we have had agency-wide training on communication, customer service, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. So each year we intend to build upon that, as well as each individualized bureau will be doing specialized training. We talked a little bit earlier about the need for training for stump grinders. So under Director Moore's leadership, we have been applying a heavy emphasis on actual training hours. I can get you that exact figure. But professional development and internal training is something that we have a plan for, and each year we have a successive topic we cover. So those are the 3 topics we've covered so far. And we're also going to be working with the Trauma-Informed Task Force, and going to be the second large city agency that's going to receive that in-depth training. So we're working on it.
Ms. Karen, do you have that request? She said she would. Could you repeat what the information you said you would get to us?
The training hours. You asked how much was the impact of our training, so I can get you the actual staff training hours that we've completed.
Thank you. That's my 2 questions. Council Vice President.
Thank you, Councilman Stokes. I will be chairing until the return of Chair Costello. And now we'll move to Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question on Service 646 Park Maintenance, page 312 in the book. It talks about there's the positions here don't make sense to me. That we didn't get as much money from the state for this particular item, this particular service, but we're hiring more people. I don't know if any of the budget people or, well, the director is talking with the chair. Any of the budget people know? BBMR, do you know?
I apologize, Councilwoman Ramos, but what was your question again? I'm sorry.
My question was, under Park Maintenance Service 646, we're getting less state funding for this service, but we're actually hiring more people. Is this,
I
Go ahead.
I can answer that. So
Okay.
what was in the budget from last year was actually unallocated grant funding. So it's not a decrease in actual funding because the 22 amount was unallocated. So it was in anticipation of receiving a grant that never came.
okay, and is that the case for this year too, the 1.9 million? Or because, Chair McIntosh has sprinkled lots of money all over our city, including in Rec and Parks, so I want to make sure that just money, that didn't make sense to me that there would be a higher number one year with lower, you know what I mean?
The 1.9 for 23 is confirmed.
So
that's real money coming in.
That's super real money coming in.
That's super real money,
Okay,
yes.
That's great. So the park maintenance folks, we're going to actually have more people in park maintenance, which is great considering how many parks I have in my district. So that's great, thank you. And then the second question is also related to parks. Again, I've been satisfied with the park mowing this year. Clifton Park and my parks are looking really great. This has to do with programs and events at our parks. Do we have standards for capacity? So for instance, the band shell at Clifton Park, and I'm sure this is the case in other parks, but I'll just use Clifton as an example. The band shell is unusable. It's not, we can't, it's hard, it's gonna fall apart if too many people are in it. But the grounds on the outside were really initially designed back in the day for only 500 people, but we generally keep putting events in there that are 2,000, 3,000 people. And I am so happy when our parks get used. I'm good with this. But what I want to know is whether or not we do an assessment of each of our venues within our parks as to what capacity they should have, and if we have that, is it listed somewhere so that when people are looking for venues, they know they can only have 500 people at that particular location? Do we have the special events people here?
So I have Nicole Green is here that can answer that question, but I just want to quickly start that we have limitation capacities for some of our indoor facilities and of course some of our outdoor pavilions. But then when it comes to green space, even though it's a band shell, there is a large green space that surrounds that band shell that has to be factored into that. But I'll turn it over to Nicole if she wants to expand on that as well.
So I'll jump in here. So our permitting process in our green spaces is a collaboration between Rec and Parks and other city agencies. So as of late, particularly post-COVID, the need to relook at those things and to re-examine them has become apparent. So we are working with Deputy Mayor Leach and the involved agencies to look at that. But yes, there are different capacities. What tends to happen is there are some events that are more rowdy and that have a lot of community opposition and support. So we found that those events are the ones that are the pain points and where the crowd issue becomes the issue. So working to control the actual footprint of those events and making sure that we get both sides that are supporting the event and those that are opposed to the event to understand our processes is something that we know we need to lean into, but particularly post-COVID and people's desire to be outside, we have seen more usage in our parks than we did pre-COVID, so it is requiring us to relook at those limitations, our permit timelines, and those different things so we can have safe events in the city. And then also, there's a lot of unpermitted events. So where some parks are crowded, those events have not been received the proper city approval. So working towards how we handle that whole thing, I think will address the capacity issue. Because for a lot of things, the capacity issue isn't the issue, it's the whole entire event. I don't know that we've been in green spaces where there wasn't enough green space for people to be. So I think that it's the whole permitting process that requires some more immediate attention.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I appreciate you being very diplomatic about what's going on in my district. Because we do have this issue of people using the band. I'm just using the band shell as an example. The tension is I want people to use our parks, right? I want them to use it, but I want them to treat them well. I go running through the park every so often, and every single weekend there's trash everywhere from an unpermitted party. I mean, it's crazy. So I'm trying to figure out, I know I saw in the budget where you're bringing back the rangers for like only 5 parks or 5 rangers or something, right? So hopefully that will be, so hopefully that will be helpful. I think you're right that this capacity issue is broader than just capacity, it's use, right? In terms of what's happening in that particular area. We, I think, are resolving one of those events, but then the issue is these unpermitted events that are just wreaking havoc on my park. And for some reason, in my district, it's just happening in Clifton Park, like with these unpermitted events.
And Councilwoman Ramos, I want to acknowledge the CEO and his leadership. One of the things we've started is a summer collaborative meeting that's held weekly, and we bring all those agencies that are responsible for special events and BPD, and we talk about what we foresee coming this upcoming weekend, permitted events as well as if there's knowledge of events that BPD are getting through social media or unpermitted events. So I feel that is going to be a big push of that conversation that's happened weekly, and it's really helping us all educate and understand what we're experiencing this summer, and trying to get a hold to this as much as possible. But I think those are things that we can continue to address and look at as well.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're looking into whether or not we can actually sort of be proactive and see if there's something on social media that can then track this down. But I also do think that, you know, with the Ranger program, which I'm sure we're going to ask about, you know, hopefully there'll be people around to actually say, hey, you can't be here.
I just want to put one word of caution about the Ranger program. So the Rangers will come back. They will be particularly customer service agents. They don't have any enforcement power. They don't carry weapons. So we also want to make sure that we are keeping our staff safe. So they will be eyes and ears on the ground. They'll be able to coordinate and communicate with law enforcement if it's necessary. But their ability to approach hostile people in dispersed crowds is not a function that they will be performing. So I just
There's
want
only one
to put
person.
that out
No,
there.
I get
Yes.
that. Although I would like to make sure that they actually have capacity to write citations, particularly for those people who don't leash their dogs. I'm going to talk about that later. This is such a big deal in my district. I'm so mad about it. But they need to have some sort of...
They do, but that requires the citizen to willingly turn over their identification. So we have found limited success in that option. So if you have an unleashed dog, I'm the ranger. May I have your ID? And the most answers is
I mean,
no.
maybe we need to, I don't know what the solution is, but
Yeah,
it's a big deal. I'm actually going to be sitting on Stony Run Trail by myself telling people to leash their dogs. It's going to be horrible. And I'm not, I mean, it's just, that's the fact. So I just need somebody out there with animal control as well to just be there for 5 minutes, you know, or half an hour telling people, citing people, and it should be taken care of. It's going to be horrible. So I asked like 4 questions there, so I'll stop.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ramos. And just to end with the Stony Run Trail and the problems with dog biting and so on stretches with 3 or 4 districts, and it seems to be a that seems to be a
That's right, you
problem
have part
with
of the Stony
dogs
Run
on
Trail as well.
and also
You have something too?
Conway.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm next. Thank you for answering and giving us an update on the apprenticeship program and challenges and your continued training with staff. It's just very important. We had the library in yesterday, and thank you for the partnerships with things that you have on your campuses. And also thank you for that wonderful library that's going to be built on your campus of C.C. Jackson. And I know you, Reckin Parks was early on with the, you know, the beginning when all the talks and so on had happened. So thank you for that piece. My question is, you know, we have a lot of little small parks like behind and in alleys with a playground basically with mulch. Have you invested in improving the mulch? Because I know there's been instances where whatever mulch is being used has been infested with bugs and things like that. I know that there's upgrades with rubber looking mulch and things like that. Has there been any discussion or investment in updated mulch in some of these playgrounds? Because there was a televised problem, particularly in my mind, Violet Avenue and Keyworth, the row housing in the back is a park, a little small playground owned by Reckin Parks.
So, Councilwoman, yes, we have a contract for engineered wood fiber, and Ashley, what was that? Stewart, when was the most recent shipment? The most recent one was Patterson Park, and she's requesting additional mulch to roll out to different parks this summer. So yes, we're addressing that as well.
Okay, thank you. And a number of my questions were answered as we were going through some of the letters from some of the council members. And I'm sure, lastly, I'm sure you're still connected with Youth Works and you have youth. What are some of the jobs that you are hiring youth workers for this summer?
Normally our youth work workers are support our rec leaders during summer camp, and they work in our rec centers.
Okay.
Is the goal there?
So actually dealing with other youth and residents and so on.
Yes, ma'am.
That's good, thank you. The next person was Councilman Schleifer, but looks like he stepped away. So we'll move on to Councilman Dorsey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't really have much for Rec and Parks. I mean, I talk to y'all regularly enough about the limited number of things that I feel, and compared to the list of things I have for DOT, for example, I bring you very, very little. And so you all know what my concerns are. I'm concerned that there was not a capital request for FY23 for North Harford Park. That we have a plan and a budget for that, and I can't understand why, A, the capital request that was made was only for FY24 when we want to move forward with this project now, and B, why it was in total only a fraction of the budget that we actually need to execute this project. Makes no sense to me to ask for less than what you actually need for a project. It's literally an ask, it's a request. If you don't even start with requesting for what you need, how can you possibly expect to get it ever? So that's my issue, and I don't think that it needs a response right now. I don't want to take up time with that. But I want to make sure that I'm real clear about that. It makes no sense. And if this project isn't funded literally right now, we won't get to where I'm looking to get before the end of this term, at which point I will have been advocating for this project as the lead advocate on this project for a decade without seeing it come to fruition. And that's not okay to me, and that's not okay to my constituents. I need that project shovel in ground immediately. The second thing is our permitting issues, right? We have a bifurcated permitting process that is not great. And we still have some unresolved issues over the map that was created for Herring Run Park, where there are fields on that map that do not exist, and there are fields not on that map that do exist. That seems like a really, really easy thing. I don't really want to ask about it again. I want to get it straightened out. And then there's this whole thing about like why public events that are above a certain size go to DOT instead of staying with Rec and Parks when they're above 250 people, right? There's this weird bifurcation of like even an event that is happening in Rec and Parks space, if it's above a certain size, suddenly Rec and Parks is no longer the one permitting it. It doesn't really make sense to me, and at the kind of edge of that is this problem where we permit events through Rec and Parks for 180 people or 200 people, and then 300 show up, and we have enforcement problems. I don't want to talk about it right now, honestly, but you know that I've been asking about this for a while, and I feel unresolved in this matter. We did meet about it maybe a month or so ago. I remain unresolved in this. Who is going to be long-term in charge of permitting? You had a person come in, they were here short-lived and are no longer with us. Who is handling permitting permanently at this point?
So, good morning, Councilman Dorsey. Permitting falls under my bureau, so I am the bureau head over that, and we are in the process of hiring a new chief of special events, and our hopes is that she will start July 1.
But expand on that, Councilman Dorsey, is we're looking at the future housing of permits. does it really need to be in special events, or should it be in parks? So we're looking at some exploratory options now. But I would be more than happy once we make those final decisions to definitely follow up. One of the things that we're thinking now, bringing rangers back. One of the things that used to happen is rangers and permits were under the same leadership, and with our rangers going on the risk and security, we're going to look and see where's that best fit, because permits, rangers, they work hand in hand. So I can get you more information, but of the future of permits, but we are exploring that options now.
All right, so I'm going to ask one question here, make sure I'm clear about this issue. Where we left our last conversation on this permitting issue, where events that are permitted through rec and parks that end up being of the size that it would or should have been permitted through DOT, right? Because they're much larger than they actually say that they were going to be. Those size events through rec and parks, because they were not permitted as the size where it needed to go through a police department approval, were never sent to the police department to notify them, for them to have any awareness that this event was going to happen, because it was not at the DOT level. But when it turns out that the event actually happens, it is at that level, and it's too late, they didn't know. The expectation leaving our last meeting was that all events were going to be brought to the attention of the police department at the time that Rec and Parks was permitting them. Is this the case at this point?
So as I shared earlier, one of the things that under the current CAO's leadership is that we're having these summer coordinations meetings each Tuesday, and what Nicole does is she sends a list of every permitted event that we have coming up for that particular weekend that's happening in our facilities. I do understand your concerns, and unfortunately, these are things that, unfortunately, people understand the limitations, and they will permit a party for, say, 150, and it tends to grow, and that's the benefit of at least getting our rangers back. At least they can speak to those owners, and then work with BPD if needed. But we're hoping that we can use our rangers as more of ambassadors that can meet these individuals as these things are permitted, and be able to address those as they occur, is our hope.
It's at the end of the day, though, is my understanding that the rangers are not going to be the ones that are going to disperse a party of 400 people, right?
That's correct. They will have to, what we're hoping is that they will use the customer service relations training that we're going to develop to hopefully speak to the user. But if it becomes a hostile situation, yes, we will have to bring in BPD. But what we're going to try to approach is using our rangers to be good customer service stewards to work with these groups, if
Great.
That becomes an issue.
Look, and for anybody who happens to be watching this hearing online or whatever right now, I want to be clear. I'm not saying that the police should be intervening on, any type of event in particular, but over and over and over and over again, we have events that show up in Herring Run Park where it's 400 people and they're selling alcohol, and they've got a DJ and a huge sound system set up that's literally so loud that you can't have a conversation inside of your living room 6 blocks away with your family in the middle of the day on a Saturday or a Sunday, and nobody knew that Rec and Parks actually permitted this event, but that it was for 100 people or 50 people or 180 people, and there's 400 people out there. And there have been events where literally a mile away, as the crow flies, every single available space on every single street within a mile of the event, a whole literal mile, every single space on every single street was parked with cars for an event a mile away that Rec and Parks permitted, and nobody knew that Rec and Parks had permitted it. And so nobody was at the ready to be able to do anything when it was out of control. Over and over and over again this has happened, and it cannot happen again this year at the predictable time when it happens every single year when colleges reconvene. It cannot happen again this year. This needs to be straightened out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. And it also, it seems like it's a disconnect some kind of way with the police department as well. So it sounds like it needs to be a conversation with that entity at some point. What we'll do is go back to Councilman Schleifer.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilman Conway yields to you.
Thank you, Councilman Conway. I appreciate that. So my first question I ask every single year, we all know the question, do we have an answer yet? No? Okay, so on this slide, the pillars prioritizing our youth, as I've shared every single year with you since the first day we met, my feeling is that we keep pouring money into, we claim we're prioritizing our youth, but it feels like that's prioritizing our youth except for the ones that live in the 5th District. We completely ignore them. I'm not sure what's unique about the children in the 5th District as opposed to citywide, but my question for you is, how many rec centers are there in the city?
Oh, sure.
There's 51 rec centers in the city.
How many?
51.
51, okay. So that equates on average as 14 council districts. That's an average of 3.6 rec centers per council district. We're not even getting into pools or any of the other good stuff like that. You mentioned something about a big splash. The only big splash we have in the 5th District is big potholes after it rains. So I don't know anything about these pools that you guys have or any of these other big assets that you guys talk about. But I know when I look at the Rec and Parks map of the city, of the assets, there is a giant hole known as the 5th District. And when you started here, you said there's going to be a 5-year plan. How many years have you been here?
I'm coming up on 5 years.
You're coming up on 5 years. Yes. So what you had told me, you said, look, I got a 5-year plan. We're going to look into this. You're coming up on 5 years now. It's been very clear, abundantly clear, that this is a tremendous inequity. Is your equity officer for Rec and Parks here?
Yes, Nicole Green.
I'm sorry, what was your name?
Nicole Green.
Nicole? Hi, Nicole. Is it equitable that there's not a single rec center in the 5th District and that we lack recreational opportunities as the only district in the entire city that is a rec desert? Is that equitable? I can't hear you. Can you use the microphone?
Before you answer, let me just clarify, Councilman Schleifer. I understand and hear what you're saying, but I want to clarify that one of the important pieces for us as an agency, and that's why we've been pushing for, and we're really close, hopefully, getting this comprehensive study done. It's because the challenges that has happened over the years, and I understand council districts has moved, but me and you have spoken multiple times. There may not be a rec center, but there's playgrounds. There is a field currently, an athletic field right now that we have on the renovation in your district that youth use quite often for outdoor sports. So where it does not have a rec center, rec deserts basically means that there is no recreational opportunities in an area. And I just want to clarify that there is some play spaces in your district. I acknowledge when you say you don't have a rec center, but I just wanted to clarify the terminology of rec deserts. And last thing, and I'll turn it back over to you, is that is the importance of us with our comprehensive team, and your district is one of those districts that is part of their plan and strategy that they're going to look closely at and give us some recommendations as well. But I just wanted to share
Nicole,
that.
is it equitable that there's no rec center in the 5th District?
I agree with Director Moore. It is not equitable that we do not have a rec center in your district, but we are working on a comprehensive plan to make sure that happens.
Okay. So, Director, I'm flabbergasted that you would mention that, well, there are some playgrounds in my district, there's some, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. The amount of playgrounds in my district, it's a joke. The fact that there's one of the most diverse neighborhoods in the entire city, the one that I grew up in, the Falstaff neighborhood, that the kids there don't have a structure to play on and haven't for years, and I made it a top priority to make sure that we fix that, because I know what it was like growing up there and having nothing, no place to play, zero, okay? Just the other week, in fact, and I shared this with Jenny, I had 2 kids in my district. There's a construction site. There's a massive crane towering, I don't know, 7 stories up. And 2 kids decided to climb up that crane. Now, obviously, that's a dangerous activity. And when those kids were finally rescued from that crane by the fire department, somebody asked them in not such a nice way what they were thinking about why would they do that. I said, what else do you expect us to do? We have nothing else to do. And that's the reality. So when we talk about like playgrounds and stuff, there's not sufficient playgrounds in my district. The only playgrounds that even exist and, you know, in any real framework, mostly are at synagogues or, you know, private places. There's public playgrounds. There's few and far in between. And so when you have a diverse neighborhood like Falstaff that has a lot of the same economic struggles as many other parts of the city, and those kids have zero opportunity, that's a big problem. And so when you and I spoke 5 years ago, you said, look, I'm going to generate this 5-year plan. It's gonna, you know, we're gonna work on this. We're gonna solve this. And every single year we came back, and every single year I see new funding for renovating rec centers. I've seen new centers and new recreational opportunities popping up across the city to the tunes of tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars. I've seen your map. I've seen the distance between those centers. There's a lot of kids in this city who, when they walk out of their house, the toughest decision they have to make is, do they walk a little bit to the left to go to that rec center, or walk a little bit to the right to go to that rec center? The kids in my district don't have any opportunity, zero, zilch. And we talk about fixing a field that you guys contributed, allowed to get destroyed a few years back. That money came from money that was intended from the community to go towards that. And so now there's some money to help fix some of the grass that was destroyed. That's not sufficient. And so there's really not much we can do this year, right? And the fact that I've been saying this for 5 years, but there's a lot that this city council can do next year. And I'll be damned if I don't. And I'm telling you that the fact that, and I still have that 5-year plan because I saved it. And I still have that book sitting in my office that you gave me, said, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this. Let me ask you this question. In 5 years, have you made one single request to the planning department to include a recreational center in my district? In any of the requests that you have made to the planning department for capital dollars, have you ever made a request for a rec center in my district? It's a yes or no.
No, we have not at this current time.
So why have you not made that request? You have looked me in the eye countless times and told me that, and as a former resident of my district, you looked me in the eye and told me that you were going to work on this. And then when I find out from planning that you guys sent them countless requests over the past 5 years, and not once has it been to work on the recreational desert that I have known as the 5th District, what should we say to the children of the 5th District? The fact of the matter is, and tell me why I'm wrong, Rec and Parks has failed the children of the 5th District. And we can't blame a previous administration. You looked me in the eye and told me you were going to work on this with me 5 years ago when you asked me for my vote in the Executive Appointments Committee to confirm you as the Director of Rec and Parks. I shared with you that this was a problem. You told me you were going to work on it. And here I find out after over $5 billion of capital money has been spent through the planning department and different projects that have happened, that not a single time have you requested in the 5th District. Why is that?
So, Councilman Yitzi, as I stated before, and I will continue to work on it based on a comprehensive plan, but I want to clarify to you, the money that we commit each year in capital, When I walked into this facility, this department less than 5 years ago, there was money that was already allocated. There was projects that was passed from year to year to year. So each year, what we've been trying to do is finish the projects that was starting the funding. How can we start? It costs $10 to $15 million minimal to build a rec center. The current system of what we're working with planning now to do is going forward is to look at ways that we don't ask for partial funding anymore. Because the challenge that we face is that year one, you may get $1 million. Year two, you may get $2 million. By year three, that cost has elevated that now we got to raise more money. And so as an agency, we have done our job to try to balance existing capital projects that had been committed for years before I came into this seat, and while I've been in this seat, that we're trying to finish. And it's not that we're not committed to any district in the city, and that's why we keep saying it is so important as an agency that we look at this city from a holistic standpoint and not just one district. And that is a challenge that we're facing as an agency, is that there's been master plan after master plan in certain districts, and those plans haven't been funded. So as an agency head, my suggestion to our team as part of a 5-year plan, this is year 3 of our strategic 5-year plan, I want to clarify, is to develop a comprehensive plan to look at all existing capital projects, all existing current master planning and other things, and have our consultants work with us to look at not just your district, but the entire city, and look at our current system. So I hear your frustration, I hear your concerns, I will say that I will continue to work on addressing the needs that you have, but the needs of the entire residents of Baltimore. And that is my commitment, sir. But I mean, just to say that we're totally ignoring your district or not trying to work for you, sir, I'm just saying that's not what we're doing. But I'll turn it back to you.
The only holistic approach that you've taken to the 5th District is to continue to leave the 5th District as a whole in the wreck of the city. And so the fact of the matter is that now you're in 5 years. You told me, okay, you know, it's going to be part of the 5 years. Now you're telling me you need even more time. And I'm not saying that I'm expecting that a center would have been built by now. I'm not saying that. I understand the timeline. I have looked into it in great detail. I understand the timeline. My problem is that you have been here for 5 years. You have been telling me every single year, and trust me, we can pull the clips every single year because we've had this conversation every single year, and then countless times in between throughout the year. To the extent that every single, hold on 1 second, that every single one of my colleagues know about this, okay, because it's painstaking every year. And you've been here 5 years and you've never even made the request. You've never started working on the plan. And what I'm telling you, and I'm being very clear about this, I have made this a top priority. You have not worked with me to address this. You have not taken the steps to work to further this. And I'm just telling you, I am going to take unprecedented actions moving forward coming into next budget year, because I know we don't have any control this year. But I am telling you right now for next year that I will not sit back and allow this inequity to continue and allow you and Rec and Parks to continue to fail the children of the 5th District. It is not fair. It's not equitable. And I am going to get to the bottom of what makes the children of the 5th District so unique. What about those children that they don't deserve all the assets that have been opened over the past 5 years during your leadership, all the plans that you've requested of planning for moving forward for the next 5 years? I'm not going to sit back and allow that to happen.
Councilman Schleifer, point well taken. Do you have any final, Director Moore, you have any final statement so we can move on?
No.
To the other questions.
Can I make one budget request? One request of MOGR for this?
Request. Go ahead.
If you can, for this service that relates to, all the recreational stuff, so if you can just break down the recreational stuff by council district, since your time here over the past 5 years, if you can give us a district by district how much money Rec and Parks has spent on projects that are exclusive to a district, so any center, any pool, anything that's physical, tangible things. I'm not talking about like the Charm City games, I understand, are citywide. Items that are exclusive to a district, that are physically in a district, if you can provide the breakdown of funding that you guys have spent over the past 5 years per year in each council district, I would appreciate it.
You have a timeline on that, and is that feasible, Director Moore?
We'll work with our budget team to see to get as much information as possible, Councilwoman, Vice Chair.
Oh, thank you. I'll come back. We'll come back to Councilman Conway, and we'll move on to Councilmember Cohen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Director Moore and team. Wanted to start on a positive note and say that I think you all have some extraordinarily talented and extraordinarily underpaid staff, particularly in the rec centers, in the parks. Want to shout out in particular Israel Nunez over in Southeast Baltimore, but just generally all the folks that I've had the pleasure of working with really care, and that's good to see. And I think there's a need to professionalize your staff in some ways and to raise the standards on hiring, on retention, on recruitment, and that takes money. And so my strong suggestion for you all as we consider the council's additional budgeting power heading into next year is to push both us and the administration on some raises for folks so that we don't lose them like we're losing all kinds of municipal staff in this city to either another jurisdiction or an entire different workforce. I think we have to make some hard choices as a city about what we value, and the great exodus of talent out of rec centers, libraries, soon to be our schools, is a reality unless we directly address it. So want to start there. Couple of questions. In my colleague from Mr. Dorsey over here was talking about the Park Rangers program, which I know had been, I guess, disbanded and then was sort of being reconstituted, and there was also the Park Ambassadors. It feels like it's kind of been a while and there hasn't been a ton of communication on what's going on with it. So could you just walk us through like what the status is, when we will see a full resumption of that service, what it will look like? We had talked in the past about the policing powers that they would need. So if you could share, what powers they will have. And this, in some ways, I want to echo the comment from my colleague from the 14th District who was talking about off-leash dogs and what a headache that is for all of us, because again, we hear again and again and again from our constituents, and it's just an ongoing nightmare, and one that we have, I know I've spoken to you guys for a couple of years about and has not been addressed yet. So I want to hear status update and sort of the vision of where we're going and a timeline on the Rangers/Park Ambassadors program.
Councilman Cohen, thank you for that question, and thank you for the kind words for our team, and our team really do work hard, and Israel's done a phenomenal job, as well as the others that's in the Southwest District, Southeast District, I'm sorry. So yes, we did go through a time where we removed Rangers. Our Rangers was temporary part-time, and it was hard for us to consistently bring Rangers back each summer, so we kept training the same people. So with the support of this administration, this budget, we're actually going to fund 5 full-time Ranger positions, 1 supervisor and 4 Rangers. The benefit there was to help us with consistency, right? So once this budget is passed, our next step will be to start the recruiting process of the hiring of these Rangers. To echo, we are still interested in the ambassadors. One of the biggest challenges has been it's been hard for us to hire ambassadors for various reasons. One is it is part-time. 2, it is relatively taxing, and this is not a simple job to do. There's some different challenges that they face. But to go back into the vision of the Rangers, the focus, the same conversation me and you have had about the ambassadors, is the same approach that we want with our Rangers. We want our Rangers to be more customer service ambassadors, to be able to interact with people, to be able to serve the community. We do understand and we acknowledge, I think, you, Councilwoman Ramos, and others have spoke about the whole off-leash dog issue, and that is an issue. And you know, we've put some efforts in working with animal control and BPD, where we was doing some intentional policing in some of the areas that we knew was high off-leash dog issues. One of the things we start seeing is that people got educated to that as well, and they would leash the dogs as long as this authority was around, but the moment these people will leave, they was unleashing as well. So we have to continue to work on that. But that is the goal of our Rangers. The Rangers still will be able to have the enforcement power to write tickets. But as the Chief of Staff stated earlier, if it's an off-leash dog issue, that means that they will have to actually ask that person for their ID, which we did have some of that, which was extremely difficult and challenging for our Rangers. But they will also be able to continue to write tickets if there's cars parked on grass and those things. But that's going to be the magnitude of their enforcement power. But what we're hoping is that our Rangers could be more customer oriented, that can engage with our residents, engage in our parks, and then also continue to find ways to increase our ambassadors, so that we could have ambassadors more so in the parks, and Rangers, since it's only 5, they're gonna have to float the city, right? So it's not like they'll be able to sit in one devoted park, but what we're hoping is we can continue to try to steer young people to be park ambassadors, and their job will be also customer service oriented. So that's the vision now. And yes, we have had conversations. There was a time where Baltimore City Rec and Park in the 80s did have park police that had different powers, and of course there was a reason that got removed, but we'll continue to work with BPD. Our Rangers will try to resolve the issue. Their safety is important to us, but if they can't, then they will have to reach out to BPD to help solve that problem if something's occurring that involves the safety of their as employees.
So just as a follow-up, can you just walk me through what happens, and I'm not going to say if because it's a when, someone has their dog off leash or in some other way is flouting the rules and laws of the park, and then the ranger engages and attempts to issue citation. However, the person refuses to provide their identification. What's the next step from there? Like how does the ranger then resolve the situation?
Well, first and foremost is that as part of this ranger program, and our state association has a detailed ranger school, and that's something that which will be the first time, but we're gonna put our rangers through that, and some of that is de-escalation training. But if for some reason they cannot de-escalate the situation, they will have to retreat to a safe area and call for support of BPD. The challenge that I will share with you there too will be that probably by the time BPD is able to respond to that person will probably have left the park. But that is the approach of our rangers will be to encounter, to provide positive customer service, encourage them, explaining to them why it's important for them to have their dog on a leash. If it becomes hostile, we will hope that they will use that de-escalation training to try to de-escalate the situation, and not be aggressive of just saying, hey, give me your ID, because that's gonna cause more problems, right? But then if they cannot solve that situation, then our job will be is to make sure that those rangers retreat and then call for support. And I think there's conversations we've had about and we've met with the community, if you recall, about a defined area for all off-leash dogs in a time period. I mean, we need to continue to look at exploring some of those options, but that is the gist of what we could do at this current time, or what our rangers will be trained on how to handle this off-leash dog situation as they come back on.
Okay. I'm going to just state for the record that I remain concerned that if a ranger is not fully empowered, and I do appreciate the focus on de-escalation and the focus on mediating the conflict before it becomes bigger than it needs to be, However, I also know that there is a community of folks, and I don't fully understand why, but that gets a thrill out of flouting the rules and having their dogs run around and putting everybody else's dogs and humans in danger. And I remain concerned that there does need to be some level of carrot and stick and enforcement, because I worry for that small amount of people, they're going to continue to blatantly disrespect the entire community unless there is a clear, certain consequence. Leave that alone for a minute. So one of the things you and I have talked about frequently as well is the need for more outreach to our Latino immigrant community in Southeast Baltimore, the need for more bilingual staff, the need for just making sure that community, which is very large in Southeast and is growing across the city, feels welcomed, feels safe, feels connected, feels like they're being culturally affirmed in our park and recreation space. Was hoping to get a status update on both hiring and what we are proactively doing to make sure that, again, a large segment of our community that often does not get recognition within our city is being recognized, supported, and kept safe.
So I'm going to eventually turn this over to our chief of staff, who kind of heads up our Latinx committee. But we do have our staff, and they're meeting, and there's some job fairs and some other things that we've done intentional to make sure that we're focused, because there are some of our rec centers that have a large bilingual population, and that we want additional staff to help support the community. So I'll turn it over to my chief of staff, and she can kind of give you an update of where we are, what we're doing with that recruitment.
Yes, and Tim McGarrett's in the back too, who is involved in that committee. So maybe 6 months ago, we officially launched an internal work group to begin looking into how we service our Latinx community specifically. We are very excited that we have a name, and we are looking to launch officially in the fall during Hispanic Heritage Month. Leading up to that, we have had 2 bilingual job fairs, specific recruitments. We actually have specific postings for bilingual staff. I can report that we've had some limited success there. So what we're hoping to do prior to our launch is to have a town hall type meeting with interested community folks to have some dialogue to make sure what we're planning to launch in the fall completely meets their needs. So we plan to educate, empower, and engage. So we're talking about events. We're talking about providing staff with appropriate DEI training and some elementary level Spanish classes that we're making available to our staff to learn the language. So we are very confident and excited. We actually had a meeting yesterday with our internal committees. We have a new community engagement manager who's also going to be helping in that effort. So we're very comfortable about the progress that we've made, and we'll be able to officially launch in the fall. So we've had thinking about things like a large soccer tournament to kick it off, thinking about some entertainment and movies, but we want to make sure that it can't be for us without us. So we need to talk to the people that we are actually attempting to serve. So Israel is a very strong leader on that committee, and we're looking forward to moving full steam ahead towards the fall for our official launch.
Great. I would just say that it is also a community that generally has a pretty strong mistrust of local government, government in general. So to your point, Jasia, the need for not just outreach, but outreach that utilizes trusted messengers is really important. So I would suggest engaging with folks like Bishop Bruce Lewandowski at Sacred Heart Church, the Creative Alliance, Lucia Islas from Comité, groups like Centro Sol that already utilize the parks over in Bayview, the Creative Alliance, certainly my colleague from the 14th District, who is our first Latina on the city council and who has really championed that community as well. But I'm just saying it ain't gonna work unless you do a lot of forward intentional outreach, and if you and you gotta do it with the right people, because otherwise folks just aren't gonna show up, and they're not gonna trust a word that you or I have to say about it. So really hope to see that happen, hope to see the efforts be really robust, because again, we wanna make sure every community in our city knows that they're welcome, they're respected, they're safe when they're in our rec and park space. Thank you, and looking forward to partnering with you all as our second agency on the Healing City Act. Very excited about it. So thank you both, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Cohen, and now we'll move to Councilman Torrance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good. Still good morning. I'm just checking. Good morning. And yes, Ms. Margaret, I'm talking to the mic. So my questions are related to our capital spending. One is, what relationships or strategies are we going to leverage in the next General Assembly, given that we still will have a surplus next year from the governor's office, more than likely, to see if we can get some type of capital spending come back to Baltimore? Because I'm going to be transparent that like a number of recreation centers have some infrastructure needs that we need to get done. I'm posing this question to DGS as well, because we need to make sure that we're able to deliver in our current recreation centers before we build new ones. So I just want to know, what are the strategies that you're going to implement moving forward, as we know that we may possibly have a surplus at the state level again?
Councilor Torrance, thanks for that question. I'll start is that we're in a really good position from a capital standpoint of understanding the conditions of some of our facilities. As you all know, we have a full pool assessment of each one of our pools, and with a scoring system that we've helped us identify the order of the pools that we need to replace or renovate. We also have that information for our rec centers, which is what we're are going to continue to use to help us make those decisions. And so what we internally have started doing is looking at a 3 to 5 year outlook of what rec centers need to be renovated versus what rec centers need to be replaced based on the assessments that's been completed. We all know that it's going to cost more money to replace a rec center versus renovations, but what we're asking our capital team to do is to assess those strategies around, does it make sense to renovate a failing system, or is it going to make more sense for us to build new? And what one of the strategies that the planning board has asked us to do is, in the past, what we've done is we will ask for a small portion of money every year to try to fund a project. What they're asking us to start looking at is ask for the funding to do a design of the other project, know exactly what the funding ask is, and then over the next 2 years, come back to the planning and ask for the money to do the construction. So if we take that approach, that means that we'll be investing in less projects, but we'll be able to get projects done in a faster pace and off the board. So we're going to try to continue to balance, rec centers, playgrounds, swimming pools, because we can improve in terms of more playgrounds than we can replace a swimming pool or rec center. So we do have that list, and we'll be more than happy to continue to have conversations with your office. I do understand some of your concerns about some of your facilities that are in your district, and
Oh yeah, I'm ready to beg for money from the General Assembly for Lillian Jones. I'm going to be transparent with the public that there's been issues with the building, that DGS has not secured it, and that it is still causing issues for our young people in Sandtown, Winchester. And I just want to make sure that instead of renovating a building that more than likely will be turned over to a private entity soon, to just build a new center across the street where we can esteem those children. But my next question is related to one of the premier institutions in my district, which is the Baltimore Zoo, and also, actually the Maryland Zoo, but they used to be the Baltimore Zoo. They have some infrastructure issues. I forwarded to your staff. It is a large sinkhole, not a pothole anymore, and I just want to make sure, as a budget ask, that we get that done and completed soon. Major because it became an incident with an actual motorist who was going to brew in the zoo, as well as night. And then I believe there's a night brunch coming up. So as a attraction that supports the city, but also attracts persons from the surrounding counties, I think that trying to enter into the property and potentially driving on the sinkhole is not going to be helpful. So I just want to make sure that we bubble that up. And my next question is, I would love to see the list of the scoring system for our recreation centers as well as our playgrounds to see how I can strategically work with the administration to beg to the General Assembly to help out some of my colleagues with their asks as well.
Yes, sir.
The scoring system
that they use for maintenance of rec centers and also the playgrounds.
Thank you, Councilman Torrance, and we're back to Councilwoman Ramos has some more questions.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I think Councilman Schleifer had a request for all of the projects in each of our districts. Did that also include capital and ARPA? I just want to make sure that that was.
I think he asked for capital, but if you want us to expand
Yeah,
the
could we
ARPA
add to that to have not just a capital budget in each of our districts, but also the Rec and Parks was a beneficiary of a lot of ARPA money as well as state money. So any of those projects per district, that would be super. I know it was a specific request from Burnett for his district, but I think it would be good to have it for all of our districts.
So can you give that ask? Okay.
Yeah.
So we
That would
expanded
help
that.
us advocate for you as well.
Right, exactly. So the list of projects for this year's capital budget for ARPA and state money. Because like I said earlier, Chair McIntosh is in her, swan song last General Assembly decided that, Baltimore deserved a lot of money, and we agree with her. So I want to make sure that's done. Thank you.
So now I just want to clarify that the original ask was for FY20, 21, and 22. So we want, ARPA won't be, it's
Yeah, so,
recent years,
yeah, I had come in just as he was talking about it, so I just want to make sure that we then add the, moving forward, the 23.
Okay.
Yeah. So it'd be 23 because ARPA and the, others are coming in, so I appreciate that. And then.
Marguerite, do you have that? Okay.
And Natasha, Nate, everybody's got it? Okay, cool. The other question I had was about about the pools. Super excited, obviously, about Druid Hill Park Pool opening up, and we've had a lot of people enjoy Clifton Park Pool, and I do know that Coldstream Pool is being redone through ARPA, so I appreciate that. The question was about, we had some issues last summer with Clifton closing, just unexpectedly because of, we have a water issue in our rec center. And wondered what the process will be, making sure that not just Clifton, but if any pool has to unexpectedly close, how we're gonna get that message out to not only those who made reservations, but to the public. Because last year, I don't think we had a good system for that.
So you're correct, but what we will do is not just send the email out to the participants that's registered. We'll make sure our marketing communication team, which normally does when there is a pool closing, a rec center closing, they immediately also share that information on all of our social media channels as well. And then Tiara, the BCRP alerts. Where you at? Can you talk a little bit about BCRP alerts and how we can? It's a mic behind you.
Oh, you need a mic.
Okay, you got talking to the mic.
Is it on?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Hi, I'm Tiara Brown, the Chief of Marketing Communications. So we do have a system called BCRP Alerts, hashtag BCRP Alerts. We designed it about 3 years ago. Basically, it's a way to track any service disruptions. So that can be recreation center closures, code red alerts, pool closures, et cetera. We do also work through our Civic Rec program to craft messages that go out to all of the registrants. So, of course, we can amplify, and we do try to tag you in our posts and things of that nature. So we do appreciate when the council also amplifies those messages.
Yeah, so we can sign up for those alerts. I'm sorry, I haven't done it yet.
Yeah, you can just literally Google the hashtag BCRP alerts and you can see all of them. You can also follow us at Rec and Parks on all 3 channels. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and follow the alerts that way as well.
That would be great. I think we did have a specific problem with that in Clifton last year, but I think we're going to be able to take care of that. Madam Chair, I have one question from Councilman Burnett, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. While COVID certainly impacted the ability to conduct maintenance issues in completing service requests, what's being done to improve the response rate for maintenance issues?
When you say maintenance issue, park maintenance issues?
I think it's parks and also recreation centers.
Okay. So, Ed, you want to talk a little bit about what we're doing from a maintenance standpoint to address our service requests?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair and board members. What we're currently doing right now to improve maintenance is we have a comprehensive plan that we're looking at for all the parks. So let me start with mowing, for example. What we would like to do, or what we are in the process of doing, is ensuring that all of the districts are, in every park location is mowed every week, 7 days, from April 1st through mid-November, early December, depending on the weather. So each district is on they have their own schedule. So Carroll Park, Monday, Clifton Park District, Tuesday, Druid Hill, Gwynns Falls, Patterson. And that's done through the schedule I just mentioned before. Now with that, we are also in the process of training our staff to be more aware. We are of what to look for when they go into these park locations to improve our maintenance. We've recently redone our QA/QC process to include more detail and have a specific checklist, which is about 2.5 pages long, for our managers to actually go through when they go to each park location to conduct these inspections as well. So we're expecting that will improve our maintenance over time. That's going to have to be trickled down to staff so that staff can be properly trained on what to look for also. But this should simplify the process for us and make us more efficient and more productive, thus improving our maintenance services and our output within the parks. Now, for facility maintenance, we're in the process of hiring new staff, new managers. We just hired actually a bilingual division chief for facility maintenance. He's scheduled to begin working or come on staff at the end of June because he had other arrangements going on. So we're looking forward to that. We feel really confident about him and his skill set and what he can bring to the table in helping us improve our facility maintenance operations. With that, we've gone through some restructuring on how we plan to approach our facility maintenance. So we've broken it down to 3 sections. So we have the trades, we're going to have a contract piece, and we're also going to have a custodial piece. We're going to have managers over each piece, over each section, so that we have more accountability, so that we'll be able to track these SRs. The plan, once the managers come on board and we can actually get more staff, because that is also an issue for us, is to then kind of create a schedule so that we can go into a facility every day or every week and actually try to knock out those SRs for that facility that day.
Sorry, can you repeat? You're going to do three groupings there.
Three sections within facility maintenance.
So tell me what that is.
One section will be trades. One section will be contracts, so contract management, and working with vendors. And the third piece of that is the custodial piece. So that's the cleanliness of the facilities.
So you think that with these groupings and new management that we'd be able to get SRs taken care of more efficiently? More efficiently
and improved response time, yes.
Mm-hmm. And that's for maintenance of buildings, but also park maintenance?
Park maintenance, yes, as well, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. So
no
you have
problem.
more to add than?
No, I believe that's it, unless there are any more questions for me.
No, I think that was all that I had from Burnett.
Okay. Councilman Cohen, any further questions?
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you, Department of Recreation and Parks. As you see, this is, your department is a vital department for the health and well-being of all of our citizens and residents in Baltimore City, and we do thank you for all the work that you continue to do to help move our city forward and make a viable place for our residents to work and play. And we do have beautiful parks in our city, so please continue to do your best in everything that you do. And at this point, we're going to go in recess. You have some asks that the council has requested, so please work to get those to us. And we will now go in recess for lunch until 12:30 p.m., in which the Comptroller's office will join us at 12:30. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.